You wake up in the morning and your knees feel stiff. You reach for something on a high shelf and notice your arm trembles slightly. You walk up a flight of stairs and need to pause halfway. Your hands tingle at night. Your ankles swell by evening. You feel tired even after a full night's sleep. Most people over 60 experience at least some of these symptoms, and the common response is to assume this is simply what aging looks like. But I want to be very clear with you today. These are not random occurrences, and they are not inevitable consequences of getting older. These symptoms are signals. They are your body telling you that something fundamental is breaking down, often years before a serious decline becomes obvious. What I'm going to explain to you in the next 20 minutes is what's actually happening inside your body after age 60, why it happens, and most importantly, what you can do about it while you still have time. After 3 decades of clinical research focusing on aging populations, I've seen thousands of patients who believed their physical decline was simply their fate. But the science tells us something very different. There is a specific biological cascade that begins accelerating after age 60, and it involves systems most people never think about. We're not talking about your heart or your brain in isolation. We're talking about the foundational architecture of your entire body, your connective tissue, the integrity of your muscle fibers, the efficiency of your circulation, the control of chronic inflammation, and your ability to actually absorb and use the nutrients you consume. These systems don't fail overnight. They weaken gradually, quietly, day after day, until one morning you realize you can no longer do things that were effortless just a few years ago. Let me start by explaining what changes biologically when you cross that 60-year threshold. Your body has been maintaining itself through constant repair and renewal since the day you were born. Collagen fibers that hold your tissues together are constantly being broken down and rebuilt. Muscle proteins are synthesized and degraded in a careful balance. Small blood vessels remain elastic and responsive. Inflammatory signals are produced and then resolved. But after 60, this entire maintenance system begins to slow down significantly. The rate of collagen synthesis drops by approximately 40 to 50% compared to your 30s. This isn't just about skin appearing older. Collagen is the structural protein that holds together your tendons, ligaments, joint cartilage, blood vessel walls, and the connective tissue that surrounds every muscle fiber in your body. When collagen production declines, it's like the scaffolding inside your body begins to rust and weaken. At the same time, something called sarcopenia accelerates. This is the progressive loss of muscle mass and strength that occurs with aging. After 60, if you do nothing to prevent it, you can lose between 3 and 8% of your muscle mass per decade, and the rate accelerates further after 70. But it's not just about quantity. The quality of the muscle tissue itself changes. The muscle fibers become infiltrated with fat and fibrous tissue, making them less efficient at generating force. The mitochondria inside muscle cells, which produce energy, become less numerous and less functional. This means that even the muscle you still have doesn't work as well as it used to. Your circulation undergoes profound changes as well. The endothelium, which is the thin layer of cells lining all your blood vessels, becomes less responsive. These cells normally produce nitric oxide, a molecule that keeps blood vessels relaxed and dilated, ensuring good blood flow to all your tissues. After 60, endothelial function declines, nitric oxide production drops, and your blood vessels become stiffer and less able to adapt to changing demands. This reduced circulation means that nutrients and oxygen don't reach your muscles and connective tissues as efficiently, and metabolic waste products aren't cleared away as quickly. This creates a slow starvation effect at the cellular level. Perhaps most insidiously, chronic low-grade inflammation becomes the background state of your internal environment. We call this inflammaging in the research literature. It's not the acute inflammation you get from an injury or infection, which is protective and temporary. This is a persistent, smoldering inflammatory state characterized by elevated levels of cytokines like interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha circulating continuously in your bloodstream. This chronic inflammation actively breaks down muscle tissue, interferes with tissue repair, promotes insulin resistance, and accelerates the degradation of connective tissues throughout your body. It creates a catabolic environment where breakdown happens faster than rebuilding. Now, let me share with you what the research actually shows when we intervene in these processes. A longitudinal study published in the Journal of Gerontology followed over 1,500 adults aged 60 to 79 for a period of 4 years. The researchers carefully tracked physical function, muscle mass, and inflammatory markers. What they found was striking. Among participants who made no changes to their diet or activity patterns, 72% showed measurable decline in grip strength, gait speed, and the ability to rise from a chair. But among those who made specific targeted changes to address the factors I'm about to describe, only 31% showed similar decline, and a subset actually showed improvement in objective measures of physical function. These were not athletes. These were ordinary people who simply understood what their bodies needed and provided it consistently. Another study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition examined the relationship between dietary protein patterns and muscle preservation in adults over 65. Over 3 years, participants consuming less than 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day lost an average of 1.4 kilograms of lean muscle mass. But here's what's crucial. It wasn't just the total amount of protein that mattered. The distribution and timing made an enormous difference. Those who consumed protein in approximately equal amounts across 3 meals maintained muscle significantly better than those who ate most of their protein at dinner, even when total daily intake was identical. This tells us that aging muscles become resistant to the muscle-building signals from protein, and you need to stimulate that synthesis repeatedly throughout the day to overcome that resistance. Let me now walk you through the specific factors that contribute most powerfully to the silent weakening that occurs after 60, and I'm going to present these in order from the least obvious to the most impactful, based on what we see consistently in clinical outcomes. The first factor is chronic dehydration at the cellular level. Most people over 60 are walking around in a state of inadequate hydration, and they don't realize it because the thirst mechanism becomes less sensitive with age. But water isn't just about preventing thirst. Water is the medium in which every single biochemical reaction in your body occurs. Your intervertebral discs, which cushion your spine, are 70 to 80% water. When you're chronically underhydrated, these discs compress and don't recover overnight the way they should, leading to back pain and height loss. Your joint cartilage, which depends on fluid movement to receive nutrients, begins to deteriorate faster. Your blood becomes more viscous, forcing your heart to work harder and reducing the efficiency of nutrient delivery to tissues. The kidneys struggle to clear metabolic waste effectively. Even mild chronic dehydration of just 2% has been shown in research to reduce physical performance by up to 29% in older adults. The solution is not complicated. but it requires consistency. You need approximately 30 to 35 milliliters of water per kilogram of body weight daily, consumed steadily throughout the day, not all at once. The second factor involves the dramatic decline in dietary sulfur compounds. Sulfur is often called the forgotten mineral because it doesn't get the attention that calcium or magnesium receive, but it is absolutely essential for connective tissue integrity and detoxification. Sulfur is a key component of the amino acids methionine and cysteine, which are building blocks for collagen, keratin, and glutathione, your body's master antioxidant. As we age, our consumption of sulfur-rich foods typically declines, and our ability to recycle and reuse sulfur from proteins becomes less efficient. The richest dietary sources are found in the allium family vegetables like garlic, onions, and leeks, in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and in high-quality proteins from eggs and fish. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition examined sulfur compound intake in older adults and found that those in the highest quartile of consumption had significantly better measures of physical function and lower levels of oxidative stress markers compared to those in the lowest quartile. The difference wasn't subtle. It was approximately a 38% reduction in functional limitations over a 4-year period. The third factor is the collapse of the microbiome inflammation axis. Your intestinal microbiome, that vast community of trillions of bacteria living in your digestive tract, changes dramatically after 60. The diversity of beneficial species declines, and opportunistic inflammatory species tend to increase. This shift has profound consequences beyond just digestion. Your gut bacteria produce metabolites that either promote or suppress inflammation throughout your entire body. When beneficial species decline, you lose the production of short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which directly suppress inflammatory pathways and help maintain the integrity of your intestinal barrier. When that barrier becomes more permeable, bacterial fragments and inflammatory molecules leak into your circulation, driving that chronic low-grade inflammation I mentioned earlier. The foods that most powerfully support a healthy microbiome after 60 are fermented foods containing live cultures, eaten daily in small amounts, and a diverse array of fiber sources, particularly resistant starch from cooled potatoes or rice, and soluble fiber from sources like ground flaxseed and oats. Research from the European Journal of Nutrition demonstrated that older adults who consumed fermented foods daily showed a 24% reduction in inflammatory markers over 12 weeks compared to controls, and these changes correlated with improvements in muscle strength and physical endurance. The fourth factor is inadequate intake of long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA. These are not the short-chain omega-3s you get from flax or walnuts, which require conversion in your body, and that conversion becomes very inefficient after 60. I'm talking about the preformed EPA and DHA found in fatty fish, like salmon, mackerel, sardines, and anchovies. These fatty acids are incorporated directly into cell membranes throughout your body, making those membranes more fluid and responsive. In muscle cells, this improves insulin sensitivity and enhances the muscle's response to anabolic signals from protein and exercise. In blood vessel walls, these fats improve endothelial function and nitric oxide production. Most importantly, EPA and DHA are the precursors to specialized pro-resolving mediators, molecules that actively turn off inflammation and promote tissue repair. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American Medical Directors Association examined 17 studies involving over 2,000 older adults and found that those consuming at least 2 grams of combined EPA and DHA daily showed significant preservation of muscle mass and grip strength compared to those consuming lower amounts. The effect size increased with duration, meaning the benefits accumulated over time rather than plateauing. The fifth factor, and this one surprises many people, is the timing and composition of the first meal of the day. What you eat in the first hour after waking has a disproportionate impact on your metabolic state for the entire day. After 60, insulin sensitivity follows a clear circadian pattern, being highest in the morning and declining as the day progresses. When older adults consume a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast with minimal protein, they create an early insulin spike followed by a mid-morning crash, which triggers cortisol release and promotes muscle catabolism. This pattern, repeated daily, quietly erodes muscle tissue over months and years. In contrast, beginning the day with 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein and minimal refined carbohydrates creates a stable metabolic environment that favors muscle protein synthesis. A fascinating study from the British Journal of Nutrition compared two groups of adults over 65. One group consumed a high-protein breakfast of approximately 40 grams, while the other consumed a typical carbohydrate-based breakfast with less than 15 grams of protein, but both groups consumed identical total daily protein. After 16 weeks, the high-protein breakfast group showed significantly greater increases in lean muscle mass and functional strength, despite identical total intake. The difference was entirely attributable to the timing and the metabolic environment created by that morning meal. Now, I want you to think for a moment about your own experience. Have you noticed that certain symptoms seem to appear at predictable times of day? Do your joints feel particularly stiff in the morning? Do your legs feel heavy by evening? Does your energy crash in the afternoon? These patterns are not random. They reflect the underlying biological rhythms I've been describing and the way your daily habits either support or undermine those rhythms. I'd be genuinely curious to hear in the comments what symptoms you've noticed and at what times of day they tend to be worst, because those details can reveal a great deal about which specific factors are most affecting you. Let me continue with the sixth factor, which is the chronic underconsumption of vitamin K2 in the modern diet. This is distinct from vitamin K1, which is involved in blood clotting. K2 has a very specific and crucial role in directing calcium to where it belongs, your bones and teeth, and preventing it from depositing where it doesn't belong, in your arteries, joint spaces, and soft tissues. After 60, as hormonal changes affect calcium metabolism, and as dietary K2 intake remains inadequate, many people develop what we call soft tissue calcification. This shows up as arterial stiffness, calcific tendinitis, bone spurs, and accelerated osteoarthritis. The richest sources of K2 are found in aged cheeses, particularly Gouda and Brie, in egg yolks from pastured chickens, and in chicken liver. A Dutch study followed over 4,000 adults aged 55 and older for more than 7 years and found that those with the highest intake of vitamin K2 had a 57% lower risk of dying from cardiovascular disease and showed significantly slower progression of arterial calcification. The protective dose appeared to be in the range of 90 to 120 micrograms daily. The seventh factor involves the decline in stomach acid production, which has cascading effects on nutrient absorption. Hydrochloric acid in your stomach serves multiple critical functions beyond simply breaking down food. It's required to cleave protein into individual amino acids that can be absorbed. It's essential for absorbing vitamin B12, iron, calcium, magnesium, and zinc. It acts as a first-line defense against pathogens. After 60, stomach acid production can decline by 40 to 60%. This means that even if you're eating adequate amounts of protein and minerals, you may not be absorbing them efficiently. The consequence is a functional nutritional deficiency despite adequate intake. The evidence-based approaches involve consuming bitter foods before meals, which stimulate acid production, including small amounts of fermented foods, which provide both beneficial bacteria and organic acids that assist digestion, and ensuring adequate zinc intake. A study in the Journal of Clinical Gastroenterology found that older adults who improved stomach acid function through dietary strategies showed a 43% improvement in protein absorption. The eighth and perhaps most critical factor is what I call mechanical stimulation deficiency. Your connective tissues, your muscles, your bones, they are not static structures. They are dynamic, living tissues that constantly remodel themselves in response to the mechanical loads placed upon them. When you place a load on a muscle or tendon or bone, it triggers a cascade of cellular signals that tell that tissue to become stronger and more resilient. But after 60, most people dramatically reduce the amount and variety of mechanical stress they place on their bodies. The consequence is that their tissues receive a constant signal that strength is not needed, and those tissues quietly atrophy. This is not about going to a gym or doing structured exercise. This is about regularly asking your body to do things that require effort. It's about carrying your groceries, getting up and down from the floor daily, standing on one foot while brushing your teeth, reaching overhead, squatting down, pulling, and pushing against resistance. A landmark study published in the Journal of Applied Physiology examined muscle biopsies from adults in their 70s who had remained physically active throughout their lives compared to sedentary peers of the same age. The active individuals showed muscle tissue that was virtually indistinguishable at the cellular level from people in their 30s. The difference was not genetics. It was accumulated daily mechanical stimulus over decades. Now, let me address how you actually implement this information. The key principle is that none of these factors work in isolation. They are interconnected systems, and addressing multiple factors simultaneously creates a synergistic effect. Start with the morning protein timing, because this creates metabolic momentum for the entire day. Build that habit over 2 to 3 weeks before adding the next change. Then focus on hydration throughout the day. Then systematically add the nutrient-dense foods I've described, rotating through different sources rather than eating the same things repeatedly. Variety matters enormously for both nutrient completeness and microbiome health. The question I hear most often is how long it takes to see results. If you're severely depleted with significant muscle loss, you may feel improvements in energy within 2 to 3 weeks, but measurable changes in strength typically require 8 to 12 weeks. If you're making these changes preventively, you may not notice dramatic changes, but objective measures will show preservation of function that would otherwise have declined. Let me be direct. The physical decline after 60 is not primarily determined by genetics. Large-scale twin studies show that genetics account for only 20 to 30% of variation in how people age. The remaining 70 to 80% is determined by lifestyle factors and daily habits. The weakness, stiffness, and fatigue you may fear are not inevitable. They are predictable consequences of biological systems not receiving what they need. What strikes me most is how many people wait until they've experienced a serious health event before making changes. The time to act is now, while you still have physical reserve. Every month that passes without addressing these factors is a month where silent weakening continues. But here's what gives me hope. When older adults implement these strategies consistently, the response can be remarkable. I've seen 75-year-old patients regain strength they thought was lost permanently. The human body retains extraordinary capacity to heal when given the right conditions. The symptoms I described, the stiffness, weakness, tingling, these are your body's early warning system. You can ignore those signals or recognize them as valuable information and respond while you still have time. The daily choices you make are quietly determining whether you'll maintain strength and independence or gradually lose the physical capacity that makes life worth living. This is about living fully, with strength and vitality, for as many years as possible. And that outcome is far more within your control than you've been led to believe.